Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today, sitting down to talk about a very interesting Xbox interview. There have been a lot of these lately, and naturally so as we exit the showcase week and we transition back to our normal, less dopamine rush-filled lives where we're getting tons of gaming news and information. Now we're settling down a bit and we're taking an honest, open look at the future of Xbox Game Studios. And there are some little tidbits in here that are going to surprise you. We are getting into the Redfall situation once more and how Xbox Game Studios is looking at that. A particular comment on the future of Arkane may surprise you a bit. We're also diving deep into Halo, which was absent at the Xbox showcase. Much to the dismay of the Halo community, I found that quite surprising. I'll share some thoughts on that in a little bit, but also on how Xbox may be experimenting with the IP and other developers moving forward. And last but not least, we're also going to talk about Perfect Dark. Yes, that Xbox exclusive announced years ago that half the team left the studio and now we have Crystal Dynamics working on it as well. It's a messy situation, but it seems like things are going well to believe Matt Booty in this interview with Axios. So if you're new here, ladies and gentlemen, and you're into Xbox news and information, you're in the right place. Consider subscribing, and let's begin at the top with this interview with Axios and Matt Booty. Booty manages the Xbox Game Studios somewhere in the middle between centralizing all decisions and letting the teams run free, for those who don't know who he is. When asked, for example, if Microsoft had considered putting any Activision studios on its Halo franchise, should Microsoft succeed in buying the Call of Duty maker, Booty replied, quote, "If something like that were to happen, it would have to come from the studios. It's unlikely that we would come in and dictate that from the top." I like this because to me, it sounds like, look, if they want to, we're open to it. While it may not be the answer a lot of folks are looking for, which is Phil or Matt Booty coming in from the top and saying, hey, stop working on Call of Duty, go make a Halo spinoff. While I want that, I will explain why in a little bit because we have more information on this. I find this to be a positive development that, look, if they pitch it to us, we're willing to hear it. I feel like Halo just hasn't had enough spin-off material, which it desperately needs. The success of Halo Wars and Halo Wars 2 really speak to that. People want more Halo. Just when the traditional Halo is kind of failing us, we can look in other directions and have pretty good stuff. I'll get into that a little bit more, but let's keep reading here because what he has to say on the future of 343, I find mighty peculiar, especially if you're a listener of Defining Duke. On Halo, Microsoft's lead franchise has seen its flagship studio, 343 Industries, beset with leadership changes and major layoffs. A new generation of talent is now shaping Halo, and 343 will keep making Halo games, Booty says, which is unsurprising. Quote, "I feel confident in the leadership team, but the team that got us here is probably not the same team that's going to be taking us forward," end quote, he says. Now, cuts, as in the layoffs that the studio saw, were a byproduct of challenges across Microsoft and across Xbox last year, but Booty says that the team's current smaller size matches, quote, "where we're at in the production phase," end quote. He then praises the new 343 boss Pierre Hintz for having overseen the cleanup work on a compilation of Halo games that launched in a rough state in 2014 but were greatly improved through updates in subsequent years. Booty says, "Look at the quality of the Master Chief Collection and know that the core team that did that is doing a lot of the heavy lifting on Halo right now." And last but certainly not least, as for whether or not there's a new Halo game in development, Booty offered no words, just a long vowel sound halfway between a long A and a long E as he dodged the question. But he affirmed that 343 will continue to work on Halo even though other outside studios may also get involved. Now we're cooking. Look, I've said for a while, 343 just needed to go away. A lot of folks had them on their bingo card for this year's summer showcase. I did not personally because it's time for them to go quiet. They've been beat up on publicly. They need to get away from the public eye for a while. Just focus on consistent quality updates on Halo Infinite while maybe some big expansion of some kind comes around. And whether that be a new game afterwards or whatever they're doing with Infinite is very unclear to us as fans. But this was certainly not the year to get an answer for that. Phil Spencer actually separately spoke on this, saying that we have other games now. So usually he'd go to his Gears, his Forza, his Fable, and his Halo. And one of these four would have to show up at pretty much every showcase because these were the main brands carrying Xbox. But now you've got things like Starfield that you can base a whole direct on. You got things like Avowed. You have things like Clockwork Revolution. You have things like Fable again, but in a newer capacity with Playground Games, and so on and so forth, where you don't need to force Halo out into the spotlight when they got nothing to show, right? There's no need for any of that. So this is a positive development in that way, but it's also a positive development because when you look at something like Gears with Gears Tactics, Halo could absolutely use a tactics game. When we hear the rumors about Certain Affinity working on a Battle Royale game, who knows if that's actually going to be the case or not, given that Battle Royale is already not as popular as it used to be, and especially with Infinite, a kind of tapering off game in some ways. I'm still rooting for its success, but it's not thriving in the terms of player count. This may not be the shot in the arm it's looking for. There's rumors of an engine change. There's just so much influx in the terms of rumors and speculation. I'd just rather 343 go quiet, let the other first-party studios take away a lot of the spotlight from them. Let us forget about them for a while, forget about Chief for a while, and so when we come back and see him again, it's in an exciting new way with a clear plan for the future. Also knowing that it's the Master Chief Collection team that helped rebuild and retool the game is a great sign. Because if you fire that game up now, which you should if you have yet to, it is phenomenal. And they did a great job not only recovering it, but adding a ton of quality content on top of it. I'm definitely guilty of beating up on 343 a ton. I think they earned it. But to me, this was a good choice to stay quiet, and it's a great choice by Xbox to allow other developers to work on this franchise. Because I've said before, and I don't know what feedback finally got through to them, you can't continue to put it in 343's hands. Not because they're incapable, because I think Infinite was a great Halo game in so many ways. They clearly are capable, but there is so much weight on their shoulders. We need to spread the pressure a bit. They just need that kind of help here. And so now with Joe Staten out, it's a lot of change at once. Let them go quiet. But the exciting part is more Halo games from other developers, practically guaranteed. And some time away from Halo will do us all some good outside of Infinite and its seemingly quality seasonal updates as of late. Now on to Perfect Dark. In 2018, Microsoft said it was building a new studio called The Initiative. Then in 2020, released a trailer for the team's debut game, a revival of the first-person shooter sci-fi series Perfect Dark. The game is now co-developed by The Initiative and long-running external studio Crystal Dynamics. Nothing has been seen from it, and many developers from The Initiative have left the project. Booty says a lot of the departures were amicable and came to differences in approach to work. Regarding the game, he says, I've played builds, I looked at it, I'm very excited for people to see what we're doing. This is interesting because it does confirm the report that originally it was said half a starting team for the Initiative had left the building and not come back. And to say, oh, it was a difference in approach on work, I don't know if that's necessarily an encouraging development to learn, but I appreciate the transparency nonetheless. And this one, he was lighter on details. Yeah, I've seen it. I played it. We're looking good here. The good news is he's played it. This is one that I've punted to like 2025, 2026, like in the terms of release and seeing it for the first time. It's very clear. This was revealed way too early. This would be what we're going to start probably calling, if 2013 and 2024 ends up being a real success for Xbox, the old era of Xbox, where they would reveal stuff far too soon before the vision was realized, because it goes back to why we put it in this order here. Halo, again, Gears, Forza, Fable kind of being the ones forced out. They needed every announcement they could get. Same thing with Perfect Dark. I don't think anyone was really looking hardcore for what's the Initiative working on at the Game Awards in 2020. Was it great to see? Of course. Like, yeah, we love to know, okay, they're working on that. Nice. And was it like a hiring trailer where, you know, you post it and now everyone knows if you go to the Initiative, this is the game you're working on? Yeah, perhaps. And that's a good way to source talent. But despite all of that, still shown off a bit too early. It's good to know it's playable. You know, Booty said the same thing about we're excited to see what people think when it came to Fable. And Fable showed out in a way that I think was almost so visually impressive that it hurt the game. So hopefully we've learned from Fable and we apply those lessons to Perfect Dark, because it seems like the mentality here is the same, where like, let it be true, genuine player experience. It's now the definition we got to roll with, because we asked for gameplay and we got it with Fable, but it wasn't us really truly the player experience. It was mostly cinematics with a couple of snippets of, you know, swords clanging and magic and all that good stuff. But let's continue on to Redfall and Arkane Austin and the future of this team, because I'm a little surprised by this answer, and I don't know if I'm looking too deep into it, but this is where a great community discussion can take place, so let's get into it. On Redfall, the most recent major Xbox release was a critically panned vampire hunting game from the critically acclaimed Arkane Austin studio. Quote, "I feel accountable that we could have done a better job with Arkane," end quote, Booty says, describing a failure to set expectations around what the game needed to be as a first-party release. On the bright side, Redfall is getting, quote, good play, end quote, in Xbox Game Pass, and Booty's not writing it off. Quote, "It was a miss, but how much of a miss," he says. "I want to support them to be able to keep working to deliver the game they had in mind," end quote. And to fans of Arkane Austin, hoping the studio will still stay open despite the game's initial reception, quote, "That's the plan right now. They are hard at work on updates and continued content for Redfall," end quote. All right, well, let's start off with the not so negative stuff, which is Redfall getting good play. If you read the patch notes for the first real update to Redfall, they did say they've had millions of players. They never specified what. They didn't do it in a celebratory manner. Hopefully a stroke of self-awareness here that, okay, we understand y'all don't want to hear how many people have played this game, and it really matters long-term for a game that was supposed to be a live service type of title, what that player count ends up being a month, 2 months from now, which I imagine it will taper off. And I hate to sound rude, but I really do think a lot of these players were just firing it up to see if it was that bad. Some obviously out of their own curiosity, like maybe I'll like it. And well, again, you look at some of the current player counts on, say, Steam, it speaks for itself. It's not necessarily going to be a game thriving for much longer, but hopefully with some updates, it may at least make it somewhat respectable and playable, like Arkane games of yore, which were above and beyond excellent. But the real talking point here is the word usage, and we'll read it one more time, for when asked about the future of Arkane Austin, where they say, "That is the plan right now," in regards to if the studio will stay open. Again, I don't want to overreact to this because I don't think it was meant necessarily in a way like, yeah, we might end up closing them after all. I just think if you look at it logically, a studio that's known for making critically acclaimed games year after year after year after year, and we're not that far removed from something like Deathloop, which was the Lyon studio, where, I don't think we have to panic too much about this and say, oh, he actually might be thinking about closing them down. I just don't think it makes sense with the amount of talent Arkane has. At the same time, here is the honest to God truth. Their first game was released May of 2017. And then 6 years later, on May of 2023, we get their next game. So they had one game in Prey that we all know did not perform as well as it should have commercially. And then we have another game in Redfall, which we definitely know didn't perform well commercially, and is just getting a good player count on Game Pass. So in that way, when you look at the Lyon studio responsible for a lot of the Dishonored games, as well as the recently extremely successful Deathloop, yeah, I get why the wording may be this way, because both games that have come out of this studio have not been successful. And now it's on Xbox to take a look at the numbers now that it's under their family and see what's right and what's wrong. Am I rooting for this? No, never. Not at all. But again, much like I've said with something like 343, I understand the business realities, and we saw what happened with that company when there were so many consistent failings that cuts had to eventually be made. But I don't think that's what's going to happen with Arkane Austin. I just think Arkane is too valuable of a team for you to just chop them away. And there's certainly the extreme optical loss here if Xbox were to do this. You just bought a team, and within a handful of years after one flop, you shut them down. I think inevitably Xbox is going to run into the same thing PlayStation did, where they started closing down studios, started restructuring studios. We've already seen a little bit of that with 343. I think it's inevitable with all of the studios that Xbox is going to gobble up that there will come a time someone somewhere gets shut down. I think that's something there's not a lot of people are talking about. Again, does my willingness to have a conversation about it mean I'm cheering for it? Again, because I know how this industry talks, I'm going to emphasize no. But it's still something that I think is worth having the conversation on, and why I at least understand the wording here. It does not mean I like it, but I get why he's speaking this way. And again, it all can boil down to me just overanalyzing it, but the conversation's worth having nonetheless. And with that, everyone, that is your Xbox news from this interview with Matt Booty as part of Axios. Let me know what you're thinking across Halo, Perfect Dark, as well as what's going on with Redfall and Arkane Austin in the comments down below. I'm really looking forward to seeing your thoughts. Other than that, be sure to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. And a big thank you to all the patrons, all the members who continue to support the hell out of the content here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.